open again.
Yes. They know exactly where to stand so that they don't move when they have to open the door. At this moment, the aide-de-camps will then form up, and they will then basically guide and lead the way for the president to the pavilion where he will take the national salute. It will be two SA military health colonels. They should come into view very soon. That's them. And you'll see that they're wearing the auglets, as they're called, on their right hand side, and it's basically pure gold auglet.
And welcome back to studio here with Brigadier General Mashadi Malifatlo, as well as Captain Courtney Hendricks, talking us through these proceedings. So these are the aides de camp you were talking about, Brigadier.
Yes, again.
So also, we are now at 1852 and no jets.
There were no jets scheduled for today.
Were they not scheduled for today?
No. It was said on Tuesday that they're going to tone down some of the activities.
That was one of them.
And that was one of them, yes.
And Captain, we were speaking about the aide de camp and the pure gold
That's
that
correct.
they have on them. Let's speak about that.
Normally the aigulets that are worn, those little gold things, they are actually service specific. So the Army, Air Force, Navy have got different colors braided within, and it's always worn on the left whether you are with a service chief or as a staff officer on another parade. It's worn on your left, and it's got the service specific colors. For the president, everything is gold. And that comes from historic times when those little pegs that you see are actually used to be what you used to knock in the ground to tie the horse up in the evening. So it's part of that. You had your squire, and he would, the guy would then take the horse for him in the evening and tie it up. So that's actually where that piece of...
Brigadier, pardon me, before we take it all in, so the jets, was that the only scaling down that you would have put in place, or was there anything else of a scaling down?
It was only that. As I said, that this military ceremonial honors to the president, we are guided by ceremonial doctrine. So we can only, it's either we do it correct or we don't do it.
Right.
Yes.
We got to do it correctly. We need to take you into that chamber right now. So without much further ado, let's pick up the proceedings inside the chamber.
Order, honorable members. Honorable members, there will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. As we do that, may we please acknowledge our fallen members of the armed forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank you, and please be seated. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, the President has called this joint sitting of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces in terms of Section 84, subsection 2D of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, read with Joint Rule 13, subsection 1A, to deliver his State of the Nation address to Parliament. I now call on the Honourable the President to address the joint sitting. Honourable members. Order, honourable members, can we please take our seats? Honourable members, can we please take your seat and allow the President to address the House and the nation?
Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Toko Didiza, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ms. Refilwe Ntshweni-Tsipane, Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Paul Mashatile, Chief Justice of the Republic, Mandisa Maya, and Judges President, former President of the Republic, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, former Deputy President David Mabuza, former Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Baleka Mbete, former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Lichisa Tsinodi, and former Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Mr. Amos Masondo, Mayor of the City of Cape Town, Mr. Gordon Hill-Lewis, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, Regional Deans, and Heads of Missions, Members of Parliament, and fellow South Africans. We gather here as we mourn the death and tragic death and devastating loss of 14 South African soldiers who were part of a mission to bring peace to the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. We pay tribute and bow our heads to Staff Sergeant William Eddie Ola, Staff Sergeant Mulahlehi Ishmael Mulahlehi, Staff Sergeant Shahlane Theophilus Siepe, Corporal Matume Justice Malisa, Corporal Renae Nemabulani, Lance Bombardier Itumeleng MacDonald Mureo, Lance Corporal Tseke Moffat Mulapo, Lance Corporal Metsi Stensley Raswiswi, Rifleman Sibatane Richard Chokwe, Rifleman Derek Maluleke, Rifleman Tsidiso Andris Mabele, Rifleman Calvin Louis Moahi, Rifleman Moketi Joseph Mobe, Private Peter Jacobus Strado. Speaker, I thank you for getting us to honor these fallen heroes. I have directed that a national flag be flown at half-mast in honor of these fallen heroes for a week starting from tomorrow morning. Alongside soldiers from other southern African countries, they lost their lives in defense of the fundamental right of the Congolese people to live in peace and security. They lost their lives not in the pursuit of resources or territory or power. They lost their lives so that the guns on our continent may be forever silenced. So we salute them. My fellow South Africans, this State of the Nation address is taking place as we celebrate 70 years since the adoption of the Freedom Charter at the Congress of the People in Kliptown in 1955. The Freedom Charter is the cornerstone of our democratic constitution. It sets out a vision of a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous South Africa. It also sets out a vision of a country in which government is founded on the will of the people of South Africa, where the land is shared among those who work it, where the people share in the country's wealth and in all that the country produces and are all equal before the law. It is this vision that continues to guide us as we work to build the nation that we all want. It is the spirit of the Congress of the People that inspires us as we prepare for a national dialogue in which South Africans are once again called upon to chart a new path for our country. We must chart this path in a world that is rapidly changing. It is a world of both interdependence and competition, of cooperation and conflict. It is a multipolar world in which new countries are emerging to play a greater role in global affairs. We are seeing intensifying competition over issues such as trade, technology, and influence in global institutions. There are global fundamental shifts underway that affect every aspect of human life, from the growing impact of climate change to rapid advances in artificial intelligence, geopolitical tensions, and violent conflicts. In the face of these challenges, we are witnessing the rise of nationalism, protectionism, the pursuit of narrow interests, and the decline of common cause. This is the world that we, as South Africa, a developing economy, must now navigate. But we are not daunted to navigate our path through this world that constantly changes. We will not be deterred. We are, as South Africans, a resilient people, and we will not be bullied. We will stand together as a united nation, and we will speak with one voice in defense of our national interests, our sovereignty, and our constitutional democracy. By standing true to our values, by harnessing our unique strengths and endowments, and by forging a common purpose, we can turn these trying circumstances to our advantage and propel our country forward. As South Africans, We stand for peace and justice. We stand for equality and solidarity. We stand for a non-racial future, and we stand for democracy and tolerance as well as compassion. We stand for equal rights for women, for persons with disability, and for members of the LGBTQIA+ community. We stand for our shared humanity, not for the survival of the fittest. So this evening, let us speak of the nation that we want. Let us speak of the future that we want to build. Let us speak of the work that we as South Africans must do, and the work that we are doing to build that nation and to build that future. We want a nation united in its diversity. At many difficult moments in our past, we found strength in working together towards a common goal. Through partnership, we brought peace and democracy to our country, which was once troubled. We overcame apartheid, a crime against humanity that denied people their human rights, that deprived them of the land and livelihoods, that sought to strip them of their dignity, that humiliated them. Through partnership, we overcame a devastating pandemic and rebuilt our country in the wake of state capture as well. Together, we have built durable institutions that support our democracy, that protect our fundamental rights and promote the well-being of South Africans. We have built meaningful partnerships between government and business and labor and civil society and other social partners to drive growth and development. These stand as models of cooperation for the rest of the world. South Africans are continuing to work together to confront our country's challenges and build a nation that works for all. Guided by the wishes of the people as expressed in last year's elections, we have formed a government of national unity to give expression to our culture of cooperation. As political parties, we have set aside our differences and agreed to work together for the good of all South Africans. In the last week, we have adopted the Medium-Term Development Plan, which sets out a clear and ambitious program for the next 5 years. The actions contained in the Medium-Term Development Plan will advance our 3 strategic priorities. Firstly, to drive inclusive growth and job creation. Secondly, to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living. And thirdly, to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. Our most urgent task is to grow our economy so that we can create jobs, reduce poverty, and improve the lives of South Africans. To undertake this task, we need a government that works for the people. We need a state that is capable, competent, underpinned by a professional public service. South Africans want a state that treats all people with dignity, humility, and respect. A state with leaders who are prepared to serve our people with complete dedication, and public servants who are ethical, skilled, and properly qualified. To achieve these objectives, we are strengthening the role of the Public Service Commission in the appointment of key people who direct the affairs of our state, such as Directors General, Deputy Directors General, Chief Executive Officers of SOEs and board members and other senior positions. We will introduce a graduate recruitment scheme so that we may attract the best and the brightest in the public service. A capable state must start where our people live and work. In many cities and towns across our country, roads are not maintained. Water and electricity supply is often disrupted. Refuse is not collected, and sewage runs in the streets. In part, this has happened because many municipalities lack the technical skills and resources required to meet our people's needs. Many municipalities have not reinvested the revenue they earn or collect from these services into the upkeep of infrastructure. Starting this year, we will work with our municipalities to establish professionally managed ring-fenced utilities for water and electricity services to ensure that there is adequate investment and maintenance. Many of the challenges in municipalities also arise from the design of our local government system. We will therefore undertake extensive consultation to develop an updated white paper on local government to outline a modern and fit-for-purpose local government system. We will also review the funding model for municipalities. We will do so because many of our municipalities truly do not have a viable and sustainable revenue base. We will work with traditional leaders in the implementation of local development programs. We will also seek to work with our traditional leaders in ensuring that they continue their own work as we give them the recognition as the natural and indigenous leaders of our people. We will expand our support to municipalities that require assistance, drawing on the lessons of the Presidential eThekwini Working Group. We are seeing great progress in eThekwini as we implement the district development model, which enables all key role players, as in government, business, labor, and community-based organizations, to work together. As we work to reform the public service and build the capability of the state, we will harness technology to transform the way government works. We will invest in digital public infrastructure to give South Africans access to government services anytime, anywhere, through a relaunched government gov.za platform. At the heart of this transformation will be the implementation of a digital identity system. Now, these measures will in the end transform the relationship between citizens and government and create one government that is accessible to every person at a touch. We want a nation with a thriving economy, an economy that benefits all. To create this virtuous cycle of investment, growth and jobs, we must lift economic growth to above 3%. To achieve higher levels of economic growth, we are undertaking massive investment in new infrastructure while upgrading and maintaining the infrastructure that we have. We are developing innovative ways of funding infrastructure. We are engaging local and international finance institutions and investors to unlock 100 billion rand in infrastructure financing. A project preparation bid window has been launched to fast-track investment readiness. This includes revised regulations for public-private partnerships, which will unlock private sector expertise and funds. And government will spend more than 940 billion rand on infrastructure over the next 3 years. Now, this includes 375 billion rand in spending by state-owned enterprises. This funding will revitalize our roads and bridges. It will build dams and waterways. It will modernize our ports and airports and also power our economy. Through the infrastructure fund that we launched some time ago, 12 blended finance projects worth nearly 38 billion rand have been approved in the last year. These are projects in water and sanitation, student accommodation, transport, health, and energy as well. Construction of the M10 bridge in the Eastern Cape, the construction continues. This bridge will rise above the river between Port Edward and Lusikisiki and will become the tallest bridge in Africa. The Podihadi Dam in Lesotho will feed 490 million cubic liters of water a year from the Lesotho highlands into the Vaal River system, securing water supply to several provinces for years to come. Working with international partners, we are revitalizing small harbors, unlocking economic opportunities for coastal communities. We're also looking very closely at the harbor that we will build in the Northern Cape, in Bochubai, because that is going to be a game changer for the Northern Cape. We are steadily removing the obstacles to meaningful and faster growth. The economic reforms that we are implementing through Operation Vulindlela have created a new sense of optimism and confidence in our economy. Investors are looking at South Africa with much more interesting eyes as they see the reforms that we are implemented through Vulindlela. We have made progress in rebuilding and restructuring a number of our network industries. We are seeing positive results in the improvement of the functioning of our network industries, as well as the investment opportunities that are opening up and are being taken up by investors, leading to job creation. Working together with business, labor, and other social partners, we must now finish the work that we started. Over the coming year, we will initiate a second wave of reform to unleash more rapid and inclusive growth. Our immediate focus is to enable Eskom Transnet, and other state-owned enterprises that are vital to our economy to function optimally. We are repositioning these entities to provide world-class infrastructure while enabling competition in operations, whether in electricity generation, freight, rail, or port terminals. We continue with the fundamental reform of our state-owned enterprises to ensure that they can effectively fulfill their social and economic mandates. Now, this includes the work underway to put in place a new model to strengthen governance and oversight of our public entities. We will ensure public ownership of strategic infrastructure for public benefit while finding innovative ways to attract private investment, to improve services, and to ensure public revenue can be focused on the provision of public services. We are in the process of establishing a dedicated SOE reform unit to coordinate this work. The measures we have implemented through the Energy Action Plan have reduced the severity and frequency of load shedding, with more than 300 days without load shedding since March 2024. Now, while the return of load shedding for 2 days last week was a reminder that our energy supply is still constrained, we remain on a very positive trajectory, whether people like it or not. We now need to put the risk of load shedding behind us once and for all. And the Minister of Electricity will speak about it in about 2 weeks or so when he presents to Parliament. We need to put that once and for all behind us by completing the reform of our energy system to ensure long-term energy security. The Electricity Regulation Amendment Act, which came into effect on the 1st of January, marks the beginning of a new era in our energy architecture. This year, we will put in place the building blocks of a competitive electricity market. Over time, this will allow multiple electricity generation entities to emerge and to compete. We will mobilize private sector investment in our transmission network to connect more renewable energy to the grid. The Minister will tell us that we still need to install 14,000 kilometers of transmission lines. We therefore need to mobilize finance from a number of sources to enable this to happen. As we reform our energy system, we are continuing to build successful multilateral partnerships in the global effort to halt the devastating impact of climate change. Our just energy transition is gaining momentum. Over $13 billion have been pledged by the international community, and significant private capital is being invested locally. We are determined to meet our carbon reduction commitments and will do so at a pace and at a scale that our country can afford. We are revitalizing our port terminals and rail corridors through the Freight Logistics Roadmap, which was adopted by Cabinet, leveraging private capital to restore our logistics infrastructure to world-class standards. Transnet's performance has stabilized and is steadily improving. We released a network statement in December last year, which for the first time will enable private rail operators to access the freight rail system that will continue to be owned by the state. Open access to the rail network will allow train operation companies to increase the volume of goods transported by rail, while our network infrastructure remains state-owned. This will ensure that South African minerals, the vehicles that we manufacture, our agricultural produce reach international markets, securing jobs and earning much-needed revenue for our fiscus. New cranes and other port equipment are being commissioned to speed up the loading and unloading of cargo and reduce waiting times for ships in our various ports. As we forge ahead with the reform agenda, an urgent priority is to ensure a secure and reliable supply of water across the country. Many people in our cities, towns, and villages are experiencing more and more frequent water shortages as a result of failing water infrastructure. It is impossible to live without water, as we all know, and it is impossible for the economy to grow without water. We are therefore taking a series of decisive actions to resolve the water crisis, to enable our people to get water where they live, whether in townships or in the rural areas. We are investing heavily in expanding our water resources. Wherever one goes in our country, we often hear our citizens raising the issue of water continuously. So we are raising this issue to a much higher level. And like we did with electricity, I know and I am hopeful that we will resolve the water crisis that we have. Loko famba uya atindaweni to tala u kuma ku ri vakhegulu va rila hi yona mhaka leyi ya mati, va ku byela ku ri hi hava mati, hi lava ku ri hulumeni a hi tisela mati, hi ta swi endla swaleswo. Hi lava ku ri mi tiva kahle laha mi nga tshama kona ku ri mati a ta va kona, hi ta wa tisa mi wa kuma. To date, the Infrastructure Fund has secured 23 billion rand for 7 large water infrastructure projects. We have ended delays in major water infrastructure projects like Phase 2 of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project and the Umkomazi Dam. Work is underway to prepare for construction of the Ntabelanga Dam on the Umzimvubu River to supply additional water for domestic use as well as for irrigation in the Eastern Cape. Within the next year, we will complete the establishment of the National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency to unlock much greater investment in water projects. Through the Water Services Amendment Bill, we will introduce a licensing system for water service providers and remove licenses where providers do not meet the standards for quality drinking water. As part of our reform agenda, we will ensure that our focus on water is intensive and it speeds up. As we move ahead with our reform processes, we will continue to enhance our visa system to make it easier for skilled people to invest in our country and to grow tourism. This year, we will launch the electronic travel authorization system to enable a secure, fully digital visa application process. Now, this system will use artificial intelligence and automation to reduce the scope of corruption and enable rapid turnaround times for tourist visas. We have cleared over 90% of the backlog of more than 300,000 visa applications. Now, in many ways, these changes that are underway, these reforms that we're implementing, send a very strong message that South Africa is indeed open for business and tourism. As we open for tourism, the Chinese market, the Indian market, the market in the Middle East, the market in Europe and all over are waiting to come as tourists to our country. We want a nation in which prosperity and opportunity is shared by all. For many decades, our economy has been held back by the exclusion of the vast majority of South Africa's people. Black South Africans were deprived of land, of capital, of skills, and of opportunities. Our economy was starved of the potential that it has. And this is why we need to transform our economy and to make it more inclusive. That is why our focus is on empowering our people, on empowering women and persons with disabilities, because they were deliberately excluded from playing a role in the economy of their own country. And we will set up a transformation fund worth 20 billion rand a year over the next 5 years to fund Black-owned and small business enterprises. We will fast-track the regulations of the Public Procurement Act to ensure that businesses that are owned by women, by young people, and persons with disabilities receive equitable opportunities in government contracts. And we have started and will continue to train women entrepreneurs to enable them to compete for government tenders. In November last year, we launched the National Skills Fund Disabilities Program. In its first phase, this transformative initiative will empower over 10,000 persons with disabilities through tailoring training for them and through ensuring that they get stipends and specialized tools. This part of the work we must undertake as business, as government and labor and civil society to enable people with disabilities to play an important role in the economy of our country. For far too long, they've been relegated to the back rooms of everything. Through these programs, we are not only righting a grave historical wrong, we are unleashing the potential of our economy for sustained growth. We want a nation where there is work for all, where every person can earn a decent living and realize their potential, where the rights of workers are protected and working conditions are improved, where women and men receive equal pay for work of equal value. We need to ensure that growth creates jobs for all, and especially for young people. The success of the presidential employment stimulus shows how public employment programs can create meaningful work that generates a wider benefit and contributes to sustainable employment. The employment stimulus that we introduced during the COVID period has created almost 2.2 million work and livelihood opportunities through innovative models that provide high-quality work to participants. The Social Employment Fund has created over 80,000 jobs this year. It has supported more than 12,000 participants to enter entrepreneurial activities. During the past year, young people secured 235,000 work opportunities through the National Pathway Management Network. And this is underpinned by the SA Youth Mobi platform. We now need to build on these innovative programs to create jobs for young people at ever greater scale. And to create jobs, we must leverage our unique strengths as well as our unrealized potential to build the industries of the future, as in green manufacturing, renewable energy, electrical vehicles, and the digital economy that is also driven by artificial intelligence. This year, we will finalize a modernized and comprehensive industrial policy that drives economic growth. We will achieve this ambition by focusing on the opportunities in localization, diversification, digitization, and decarbonization. We are working towards the full implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which will tear down the barriers to trade on our continent. As the most industrialized economy on the African continent, we are positioning ourselves to be at the center of this new growing market. We are harnessing the sun and the wind to make our country a leader in renewable energy and green manufacturing. With an abundance of cheap green energy, we can produce products that are competitive anywhere in the world and create hundreds of thousands of new jobs in this process. We are making sustainable use of the rich abundance of the South African earth by supporting our farmers, improving our logistics network and rural supply chains, and opening new export markets for products that we grow or produce. We can significantly expand our agricultural sector. We want South Africa to be leading in the commercial production of products such as hemp and cannabis, a product that is so well known in the Eastern Cape and KZN, a product that our forebears have produced for generations and generations. We can add modern value to it and bring it to the shelves of the entire world. We are breathing new life into the mining industry, which remains one of our most important and valuable endowments. I often say that mining was the bedrock on which our economy was built, and it continues to be a sunrise industry. We are on track to implement a new, modern and transparent mining rights system this year, which will unlock investment in exploration and production. We will put in place an enabling policy as well as a regulatory framework for critical minerals. By beneficiating these minerals here in South Africa, we can make use of the extraordinary wealth that lies beneath our soil for the benefit of our people. Even more valuable than our natural resources are the diversity, the energy, and the talent of the people of this country. The services sector is now the largest part of our economy, ranging from financial services to retail, hospitality, tourism, and the burgeoning creative industry. The tourism sector is growing rapidly, with close on to 9 million tourists having visited our country last year. One of the attractive sites in our country, which we want to see growing more and more, is Robben Island. I visited Robben Island on the 8th of January. And I got to hear that in a year they are now going to receive 300,000. They want to grow it to 500,000 visitors in a year. And most of these visitors are South Africans. So we will grow tourism through our visa reforms, through increasing the number of flights to key destinations, and through the marketing of our country as the best country to visit in the world. And we have also seen strong growth in digital services, as well as business process outsourcing, as well as data centers. As the need for data grows in the world, our country is seen as a reservoir of having data centers. And this is continuing to create jobs for young people. To support this growth, we are investing in skills development for the industries of the future. The Jobs Boost Fund has pioneered a new model that links funding for skills in demand for the successful placement and particularly employment of young people. We are expanding our support for small and medium enterprises and for the informal economy, which sustains millions of jobs as well as livelihoods across our country. This includes streamlining funding for small businesses, unlocking venture capital for high-growth startups, and developing a regulatory environment that enables rather than restricts informal enterprises. To build an innovative economy, the Department of Science and Technology and Innovation will establish an innovation fund to provide venture capital to tech startups that emerge from our higher education institutions. We are calling on business to use the SA Youth Mobi platform, which currently has some 4.5 million young people registered for their hiring purposes. We're calling on business to support the Youth Employment Service to scale up workplace experience opportunities over the coming year. We want a nation where no one goes hungry, For 30 years, since the dawn of democracy, we have worked together to reduce poverty. Today, our country spends around 60% of our national budget on the social wage, on health, on education, on social protection, community development, and public employment programs. More than 28 million unemployed and vulnerable people in our country receive social assistance. More than 10.5 million learners go to public schools where they do not have to pay fees. Last year, over 900,000 students from poor working-class backgrounds and poor families and working-class backgrounds received funding to study at universities and colleges. Now, through these programs, we are alleviating the worst effects of poverty. We are providing the means through which South Africans can rise above poverty that has been passed down from one generation to the next. But we have much to do, and much more work needs to be done to end poverty in our country. We must do much more to ensure that women in particular no longer face the hopeless task to feed and clothe their children. While government invests heavily to support poor and unemployed people, these programs are fragmented and sometimes they are difficult to access. We are therefore building an integrated system of support for poor and unemployed people. We are strengthening existing programs from job search support to public employment and making sure that together they provide people with pathways out of poverty. Rather than expecting those in need to approach several government agencies separately, a citizen should be able to go to one place to receive all the support that they need. To protect the gains that we have made since 1994 in advancing children's rights, we will adopt the National Strategy to Accelerate Action for Children, which focuses on 10 key priorities, including poverty reduction, child protection, and addressing malnutrition. The Social Relief Distress Grant is an essential mechanism for alleviating extreme poverty. We will use this grant as a basis for the introduction of a more sustainable form of income support for unemployed people. Now, central to our efforts to end poverty and to develop our economy is to provide decent, quality education to every South African. We are immensely proud of the achievements of the matric class of 2024. It's a class which achieved the highest pass rate in our country's history. Now, 87% of learners who sat for their matric exams passed. For the first time in the history of our country, nearly half of these learners achieved bachelor pass. Nothing can diminish, frankly, nothing can diminish our pride in the hard work of these learners and the steady support of their teachers, parents, and broader community. And let us give them a big round of applause. We should all be proud of the class of 2024. But our immediate focus is to expand access to early childhood development for every child. Now, this will be achieved through registering and formalizing existing ECD centers and ensuring that they have the facilities, the training and material that they need to provide quality learning. We will focus on ensuring that every child can read for meaning in the foundation phase to set them up for success in later years. To achieve this, we are implementing mother tongue-based bilingual education. We do this to improve literacy and numeracy, and rolling out lessons plans, reading books, and other interventions that have been proven to work. The Funza Lushaka bursary scheme will continue to prioritize students who want to pursue a teaching career in the foundation phase. Last year, we signed the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, which was passed by this Parliament. Now, this act is pivotal for ensuring that education is accessible and is inclusive for all South Africans. This year, the Minister of Basic Education will introduce national policy, the norms and the standards and regulations to empower all partners in the basic education field to support the implementation of the Act. Now, to ensure that the economy has the skills that it needs, we are increasing the production of artisans through TVET colleges. Now, this is part of the shift we are undertaking towards education and skills development that combines formal learning with job training. Now, drawing on the models that have proven to be so successful in other countries, we're calling on the private sector to offer young people experiential learning opportunities while they undertake their studies. We are implementing phase 1 of the comprehensive student funding model for higher education to address the needs of the missing middle. This will support approximately 10,000 students in the first year. We want a nation in which there is quality health care for all. This year, we will proceed with the preparatory work for the establishment of the National Health Insurance. Now, this includes developing the first phase of a single electronic health record system, the preparatory work to establish the ministerial advisory committees on the health technologies and healthcare benefits, and an accreditation framework for health service providers. The NHI will reduce inequalities in healthcare by ensuring that everyone gets fair medical treatment. Now, the NHI will save many lives by providing a package of services that include, for example, even more especially, maternal and newborn care and services also for people living with HIV, those with TB, and those suffering from non-communicable diseases such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. Our most immediate priority is to strengthen the health system and improve the quality of care. A vital part of this is the modernization, the improvement, and the maintenance of existing health facilities and the construction of new hospitals and clinics. A number of hospitals are under construction or are undergoing revitalization. Now, these include the Limpopo Central Hospital, the Siloam District Hospital in Limpopo, the Tlhabeng Regional Hospital in the Free State, the Bambisana District Hospital, Zitulele District Hospital in the Eastern Cape, and the Bupelong Psychiatric Hospital in Northwest. Now, our projects, rather other projects, are at various stages of design and development. Now, this includes the replacement of 3 existing new central hospitals, 5 new district hospitals, 5 community health centers, and a new psychiatric hospital. To improve patient experience, we are putting more emphasis on reducing waiting times, cleanliness, and staff attitudes in the public health facilities. We are encouraged by the great progress the country has made towards ending HIV and AIDS as a public health threat. By the end of March 2024, 96% of people living with HIV knew their status. 79% of these were on antiretroviral treatment, and 94% of these were on treatment with virally suppressed conditions. Now, to ensure that we reach the target of 95, 95, 95, which has been set by the World Health Organization, we will this year launch a massive campaign to look for an additional 1.1 million people who are not yet on treatment. We are concerned about the potential impact of the decision by the United States government to suspend some of its funding for HIV and TB programs in African countries for 90 days. Now, this funding that we get accounts for about 17% of our country's HIV spend. We have been able, over the years, to provide funding from our own resources, our own fiscus, for our HIV and TB programs. We are looking at various interventions to address the immediate needs and ensure the continuity of the essential services that we might lose if this funding does not come through. Now, to tackle inequality, we do need to undo apartheid special planning, which has scarred our country, our cities, and forced many people to live far away from areas of work and opportunity. We have delivered millions of housing opportunities since 1994, providing safety as well as dignity to poor households. Yet the practice of building housing developments on the periphery of urban centers has in many ways perpetuated inequality and urban sprawl. Going forward, we're going to build more housing in our city centers and closer to places of work and business. Now, we are redesigning our housing subsidies and directing more funding towards programs that enable people to buy or rent a home in an area of their choice. We will release more underutilized state properties for affordable housing development. And we are working with our provinces and metros, and I'm glad that a number of our premiers are here as well. We're working with them to reclaim buildings that have been hijacked in the city centers and repurpose them for public use. Now, we will provide 300,000 service stands to qualifying beneficiaries to enable housing development in well-planned, connected communities along key development corridors. We will clear the backlog of title deeds for subsidized housing, turning homes into household assets. And we will review land use, building, and other regulations to enable low-cost property development, including backyard housing. This represents a fundamental rethink of how the state delivers housing at scale while turning our cities into engines of growth and opportunity. In making our cities work for their residents, we will restore the remaining passenger rail corridors and stations to full service. More than 80% of passenger rail corridors have been returned to service. Now, PRASA has introduced over 200 modern, locally produced trains on its network to provide a low-cost option for public transport. Over the next 5 years, we will restore PRASA's signaling system so that we can put all our new trains to work and commuters can be assured that they can reach work safely, affordably, and on time. Now, we also want a nation in which everyone is safe. The police continue to work with other law enforcement agencies to dismantle organized crime syndicates and combat financial and violent crimes. The South African police has partnered with the metropolitan municipalities and continues to work with communities to fight crime in the priority provinces where crime is particularly high. Now, we are intensifying Operation Shanela. Shanela has been successful in arresting suspects, recovering firearms, and seizing stolen vehicles. And we must continue to tackle the scourge of gun violence that has continued to plague our society for decades. I have asked the Minister and the National Commissioner of Police to prioritize reducing gun-related crime and violence. Now, this includes preventing the diversion of firearms into the illicit market and recovering illegal firearms in circulation. We know from international evidence and our own experience that this is the most effective way to reduce overall violent crime. The detective service, which is crucial to solving cases, will expand by 4,000 personnel through the internal recruitment processes. And we are working on adopting surveillance, analytics, and smart policing solutions for modern law enforcement. We have seen the value of technology in fighting crime, and a number of countries that have opted to utilizing technology have made great progress. And by utilizing artificial intelligence in its fraud risk detection and verification work, SARS has prevented the leakage of over 95 billion rand in impermissible refunds. It has recovered 20 billion in revenue and dismantled an illicit tobacco and gold scheme. We continue to work across society to end the violence that is perpetrated against women. We have promulgated the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act, establishing a national structure to oversee a coordinated response to this crisis. We will ensure that the Council is fully functional and properly resourced. We continue to strengthen support to victims of gender-based violence. There are now 65 Tutuzela centers across the country. Out of the 52 districts in our country, 44 have gender-based violence shelters. All police stations in the country now have victim-friendly services. And another 16 sexual offenses courts will be established in the next financial year. Now, we want a nation that deals with corruption. Last year, we established the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption as a permanent entity of the NPA dedicated to investigating and prosecuting high-level corruption. We will ensure that the Directorate is fully resourced and have access to information that it needs to prosecute state capture cases and hold those responsible to account. We are establishing a world-class digital forensic lab to support the investigation of complex corruption and financial crime. We are making steady progress in implementation of the recommendations of the State Capture Commission, including signing into law several legislative reforms. The Special Investigating Unit and Asset Forfeiture Unit report that over 10 billion rand has been recovered in state capture-related cases. Now, this year, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Department will report on the review of the Anti-Corruption Architecture National Anti-Corruption Advisory Council. This is expected to streamline legislation to eradicate duplication of mandates and foster greater cooperation between law enforcement agencies. And we will finalize the whistleblower protection framework and introduce the Whistleblower Protections Bill in Parliament during this financial year. And this year, we will strengthen South Africa's system of dealing with terror financing and further legislative systems improvements. To secure our removal from the International Financial Action Task Force grey list, we have made significant progress in addressing the weaknesses that were identified in our law enforcement system, with 16 out of 22 action items fully addressed. We want a nation that is at peace with the world. We want to continue through our international relations to advance the well-being of the people of South Africa as we seek to advance the well-being of humanity. Now, we will work to strengthen our trade relations around the world and to leverage our strong and diverse global alliances to make our economy more resilient. The key pillars of our foreign policy remain the promotion of human rights, peace and friendship, and the strengthening of fair trade and investment ties with other countries. Now, these are the principles that guide our presidency of the G20 this year. We have chosen the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainable development to underscore the need for cooperation and partnership amongst the countries of the world. For the first time in its history, the G20 is being hosted on the African continent. And this is particularly important following the admission of the African Union as a member of the G20. It is a great opportunity for us to place the needs of our continent and the rest of the global South more firmly on the international development agenda. Our G20 presidency is a valuable opportunity for South Africa to advance efforts towards greater global economic growth and sustainable development. Africa remains at the center of our foreign policy. We continue to work to strengthen the African Union, to support the achievement of peace, development, and economic integration on our continent. We know that our future prosperity is intricately linked and bound to the prosperity of the African continent. For South Africa to thrive, we must ensure that Africa does indeed thrive as well. And we must silence the guns on our continent. Now, since the advent of democracy, we've been instrumental in restoring stability in countries such as Côte d'Ivoire, Burundi, South Sudan, Lesotho. More recently, we've been part of the SADC peacekeeping mission in Mozambique that has brought relative calm and stability to the Cabo Delgado province. The presence of South African peacekeepers in the eastern DRC is testament to our continued commitment to peaceful resolution of one of the world's most intractable conflicts that has gone on for years and that has cost millions of lives and displaced many people. Now, we call on all parties to embrace the current diplomatic efforts to find a peaceful resolution, including honoring the Luanda process. We will attend the joint summit between SADC and the East African Community scheduled to take place in Tanzania this weekend, where we will reiterate our call for a ceasefire and a resumption of talks to find a just and enduring solution, and we will make sure that our boys, our soldiers do come back home. We have always believed that the freedom that we won and the international solidarity from which we benefited does impose a duty on us to support the struggles of those who continue to experience colonialism and oppression. South Africa continues to stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine, who have endured decades of illegal occupation and are now experiencing indescribable suffering. And South Africa has acted in accordance with its obligations under the Genocide Convention by instituting proceedings against Israel in the International Court of Justice. We are fully committed to the articles of the United Nations, including the principles that all members should settle their international disputes by peaceful means. We support the principle of respect of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of all states and peoples. We continue to participate in the different peace processes seeking to bring about a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. South African delegations have been instrumental in developing a framework for negotiations towards a just peace in Ukraine based on the UN Charter and international law. Our country continues to advance its agenda of cooperation and multilateralism through its membership of the United Nations, the African Union, the Non-Aligned Movement, BRICS, and a number of other international bodies. As humanity confronts unprecedented challenges, we are determined that a reformed and representative United Nations must be at the center of global affairs, and we will continue to push for progress on the reform of the UN Security Council to be a more inclusive, more effective body that is able to ensure peace and security. And we will work to ensure that the needs of the people of the world are advanced. And the work that we do and what we stand for does need to be explained to many key players, especially to our trading partners and the many countries and leaders that we interact with on the global stage. And with a view of explaining the positions that we have taken, and in particular, the objectives that we wish to achieve during our presidency of the G20, I have decided to send a delegation of government and other leaders to various capitals on our continent across the world. This delegation will interact with various key players on a variety of matters that affect South Africa's interests. I will direct that they leave as soon as possible to interact with various key players on our continent and in the world, so that our presidency of the G20 objectives can be well explained. All these things that we speak of are possible. As South Africans, We know the power of cooperation, of what is possible when people of different backgrounds, different races, cultures, languages, and ethnic groups and religions come together behind a shared objective. The formation of the Government of National Unity provides us with an opportunity to show once again that we can achieve what we can achieve by working together. And I call on all South Africans, united in our diversity, to come together in the national dialogue that we are going to have to define a vision for our country for the next 30 years. The national dialogue must be a place where everyone has a voice. It must be a place to find solutions that make a real difference in people's lives. The dialogue must reaffirm that each and every one of us has a role to play in building the nation that we want. We must therefore be builders and not people who seek to destroy the future of South Africans. While we may differ on many issues, we agree on one thing, that we need to build a better South Africa and improve the well-being of our people, and that we should do so not by sitting on the sidelines and shouting. We should be in the scrum working to develop the lives of our people. And so, as we enter the new era in the world and in our own country, let us speak of empathy, of compassion that we have for one another. Let us speak of the pride that we have of our country and all that we have achieved. Let us speak of the determination that won us freedom and drives us forward now to a better future. With this determination, we will work together to make this an era of growth, of progress and transformation. We will work together to build the nation that we want. And we will only be able to do it by working together and not by shouting together. And we will only be able to do it by ensuring that we as the leaders ensure that those who will come after us, our children and our great children, inherit a country that we have helped to build, not to destroy. Thank you very much.
Honourable members, order. Order, honourable members. I thank the Honourable, the President. Order, honourable members. After I have adjourned the joint sitting, members should rise and remain at their places until the procession has left the chamber. The guests in the gallery should remain seated until the judiciary has left, and the ushers will indicate when the doors are open. The procession, led by the usher of the Black Rod and the acting Sergeant-at-Arms, will leave the chamber in the following order. the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the President, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, the Deputy President, the Secretary to Parliament. That concludes the business for the day, and the joint sitting is adjourned. Okay. Honorable members, just one announcement. As you would recall that earlier on the changes were made with regards to the venue. Members are requested to join their spouse at the ICC. Dinner will be served and the beverages. Thank you very much.
Ramaphosa speaking about a myriad of other issues, and a lot of them sounding all too familiar, Sakina.
Indeed, but before we get into all of that, let's just welcome our S3 viewers, SABC3, and this, of course, as they also tuned in along with everybody else who's been with us to listen to the State of the Nation Address 2025. But you're absolutely right. I suppose apart from new developments, it was pretty much, more of the same.
And you speak about the district development model, for example. I would like to go back to when we first heard about it. 2019, we were told that it was discussed and adopted by Cabinet. 2019. 2025, it's still a conversation, Mzwai, that says the district development models aims to enable government to stop working in silos. It was first adopted in 2019.
Well, I think after listening to the speech, really, perhaps there will be something that will be different now that we are in the GNU. It's about time that things that are being spoken about sometimes do get executed, because for someone like myself who has had the opportunity of sitting through most of the speeches, when you hear something that is being repeated with similar words, it perhaps raises a bit of question in terms of implementation. I guess is the problem that we as a country have. I mean, how many times, Sakina and Bongo, have you heard people say South Africa has beautiful policies, we lack on implementation? This appears like a case of just that.
Well, of course, looking forward to reaction as many of those inside the chamber make their way out. And I'm really curious to hear what the reactions will be. By the way, speaking of, we see the EFF leaders coming, but just before we cross to that, the MK party have released a statement that they will be delivering their own State of the Nation address 15 minutes after the conclusion of President Ramaphosa's.
Well, I guess they mean the reaction, because they had said the real State of the Nation address will be, I think, on the 11th when they formally respond.
And it'll be an interesting one. You saw there the leader of the EFF, Julius Malema, is on standby there to speak to the reporters. Bulelani?
Yeah. Are you satisfied with the plan that is brought forward?
Well, there is no plan. The president doesn't account for what he said before this State of the Nation address. In the previous Nation of Address was Tinswalo, the other one was Tumamina. There is no accountability, none whatsoever. He uses this platform to just come and waffle. He says he's going to create jobs, but he doesn't tell us where and how. He says infrastructure is going to be developed. So much money has been put aside. Where and how? So there's no plan. It's just utterances that he just makes passing time, and then knowing very well that he will not be challenged by those he's governing with.
You look at the plan that is put forward in relation to investing 940 billion rand over the next 3 years towards infrastructure. Do you not think that will take us out of the low growth levels?
He has spoken about giving the disaster there in KZN 1 billion. Those houses are still not built. He has spoken about building 1 million houses in Alexandra. Those houses are not built. So whatever 900 million is talking about, you must know that he's just passing time. He's not the man who follows through what he committed during the State of the Nation address.
The Transformation Fund is promising for the next 5 years, every year they will set aside about 20 billion rand.
He's still saying we're going to make sure that we develop the guidelines to make sure that it is not subjected to red tapes and all manner of things. Monies have been committed before. I mean, we're still talking about water today. We spoke about water during the Guyana project. When he became the president, one of the things we said to him was the completion of the Guyana project. Till today, the project has not been implemented. Very good at putting figures, throwing numbers. Even during COVID, he was every speech putting numbers. But we have never seen any legacy of those billions that he spoke about even during COVID.
If you look at the pronouncements around the finalization of the industrial policy, as well as making the mining rights application transparent, it's something that the EFF has been actually, it's close to your heart, if I may put it that way. Are you happy that perhaps maybe he's starting to navigate himself towards your thinking as the party?
He needs to give people permits so that they can mine in this country and stop this bureaucracy and corruption that is in the mineral department. We must make sure our people have got the rights, permission to mine. And we must formalize the so-called illegal miners, especially where there is potential and the land is safe. We want beneficiation to happen here in South Africa. He speaks about beneficiation all the time, he gets bored. But we have not done anything about beneficiation. We will never create jobs if we don't beneficiate in South Africa and if we don't industrialize. As things are now, we're deindustrializing the South African economy and at the same time talk about creation of jobs. So you can be guaranteed there is no concrete plan on creating jobs in South Africa. Concrete plan. He says we must come and work closer to where we work. But what has he done about Alexander, which he has committed to help? He's just talking. He's not going to bring anyone closer to where they work, because the people who own the land closer to where we work is white people. He's not going to expropriate that land. He's just baffling about it.
All right, thank you so much, Julius Malema, the EFF leader. We're going to take more reaction on the other side of the precinct. I believe Natasha is standing by.
Thank you so much. Of course, we continue to bring you rolling coverage of the reactions here outside the City Hall. Of course, I'm now joined by the ANC Secretary General, Mr. Fikile Mbalula. So you've heard what the President had to say. Firstly, paying tribute to our fallen heroes, naming them, also saying that flags will be flown at half-mast. But also, this also comes at the backdrop of, the repatriation process being delayed.
The President has presented what is called a medium-term development plan for South Africa in terms of health, but on top, the priority of creating jobs in the economy, deepening industrialization, working with the African continent and the rest of the world. And of course, that is a very sound and practicable plan that the South Africans should look forward for its implementation, which is going to contribute to the changing of the lives of the people for the better.
In light of what we've been seeing this past week by Elon Musk, but US President Donald Trump, we heard the President also saying that South Africans will not be bullied. And as a nation, we should stand with one voice, united as one.
South Africa can't and will never be bullied. President have articulated the principles that inform our foreign policy: multilateralism, fair trade, and working with everybody. The United States of America, it's unfortunate that they peddle and rely on falsehoods to attack our great nation. And they must come straight with issues on the table that they feel they need to tackle with South Africa rather than falsehood and lies. We are very clear within the framework of multilateralism we'll pursue peace, we'll pursue solidarity, and there is no turning back with regard to that. That inform our foreign policy, which is very important.
Mr. Malula, thank you so much for your time. I do understand that my colleague Ayanda Nyati is joined by the president of BUSA, Mr. Mmusi Maimane. Ayanda, I wonder what Mmusi Maimane has to say on your side.
Well, time will tell. Let's jump straight into it. Mmusi Maimane, of course, is the leader of Build One South Africa. He joins us for his thoughts. So, a capable, ethical, developmental state, that's what we were promised yet again. You convinced this time around?
Sadly, I thought the president missed a massive opportunity tonight to bring deliberate action going forward. If you want to build a capable state, you can't afford to have any corruption at any level, especially at senior levels. And we've seen how some ministers have been accused of so many things. The collapse of local government is a function of corruption. And therefore, we needed to see deliberate action about what we're going to do around corruption. We need to be able to finance development, and I'm not sure the president is acting in a manner that delivers financial plan. I wish the president would have been a lot more ambitious. 3% is a low bar. We've grown at 1% in the last while. If we want to be ambitious, let's go for 5%. And that's what I called for a 5% plan. And ultimately, on the function of a capable state, if you want a skills pipeline coming into the public service, you need to ensure that our young people aren't just passing at 30%, they can pass at 50%, but we build a prosperous nation where our young people can compete with anyone in the world. So tonight's speech felt a lot like last year's, except what I wanted to hear more of were timelines, deliberate actions, so that next year when we come back here, we can say year on year, Mr. President, this is what you've done and not done.
All right, Mmusi Maimane, I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for giving us your quick take. There you have it, Build One South Africa's Mmusi Maimane, hoping for more ambition from the president. Of course, the reaction continues. Bulelani, who do you have?
All right, thank you so much, Ayanda. Of course, you can see or hear rather the songs that are behind me, the MK party coming out jubilant. But when I get their reaction on the State of the Nation address by the president, joining me in this conversation now is Nhlamulo Ndlela, the MK party's national spokesperson. The plan presented by the president today, does it take us out of the socio-economic challenges facing the country?
We can't even refer to it as a plan. This is just a reflection of a failed state of the nothingness address. And that's exactly what it is here. You can tell that this man has got no ideas whatsoever. Ever since he's been president, our country, if you look at the population rate, the growth rate, we grow at 1.3%. Yet our GDP per capita is at 0.7. So that alone tells you that South Africans are getting poorer and poorer and poorer. And this is what we're faced with here. It's a disaster. He talks about local municipalities. All he's doing is he's privatizing water and electricity. He's setting up entities. And we mentioned this actually in Parliament, because we could see there's another way of privatizing water, privatizing electricity, and then so-called introducing grants to fund these initiatives. Meanwhile, these are actually loans that are coming from IMF and World Bank. He talks about network industries and the recovery thereof. No, all those network industries, by the way, are burdened by the same loans that we've been getting from the IMF. If you look at the cost of electricity, I mean, you could get close to 80 kilowatts for 100 rand. Today, you get 25 kilowatts for 100 rand. You know why? Part of it's ESCOM, it's a network industry. It's funded by the same IMF. So this man has got no clue. The sooner this man steps down, the better for all South Africans. Because
a lot of emphasis is made and reliance is made that infrastructure development investments will actually assist in economic growth and then by extension lead to job creation. Do you buy into the sums that is put together today?
We are sitting at 42% of joblessness in this country. 42%. Give me one project, infrastructure project, that has actually had proper traction in this country, that Cyril can demonstrate jobs. None. 62% of our youth are unemployed. Yet he talks about a mobile platform, to youth that don't even have, some of them, cell phones, let alone data. What is the cost of data to even access that job in the first place? So it's just a whole lot of gumph that this man is talking about. On top of that, then he wants to talk about digitizing the identity, a technological program. You know what they're trying to do there? This is what they're going to try and do now. They're going to try and introduce electronic elections. And that's what they're moving towards. Once they've digitized our identities, which is a program they've been speaking about for the longest time, the next thing they're going to try and do is to now introduce electronic elections. So they can further rig, because they know that a party such as Mkhonto Wesizwe, based on their failures, is going to take over government. Come local elections, we're going to demonstrate exactly how we're going to show them in 2029 how it's done.
All right, thank you so much, Nhlamulo Ndlela, the national spokesperson of the MK party. I'm going to cross to the other side of the precinct. I believe Natasha is standing by.
Thank you so much, Bulela. And I'm now joined by the leader of the Democratic Alliance, Mr. John Steenhuisen. So once again, the priorities of the GNU: inclusive growth, growing the economy, reducing poverty, and of course creating a capable and developmental state.
Jobs. I mean, jobs is the big thing.
I mentioned job creation.
Yeah, jobs is a big thing. And this is the thing, I'm very glad the President's focus this evening was on economic growth and jobs. That's why we're part of the GNU, and I'm very proud of the fact that many of the DA Minister's achievements to date have been highlighted, and some of their plans have been expressed this evening. But I think what we need is urgency now. The Government of National Unity has got 4 years left to be able to really move the needle on economic growth and jobs. And so I would like to see a lot more urgency on port concessions, on rail networks being opened up so we can get our products around the country and to the ports and harbours. In the agri space alone, we've got huge opportunities to expand our production, but we need ports that are working to get them there.
John, just briefly before we cross to Ayanda, an issue that you actually really like a lot is infrastructure. Billions of rands have been unlocked in that regard. There will be the biggest bridge or tallest bridge in Africa in the Eastern Cape that will be built.
Yes, absolutely. And this is another great thing. We're moving from consumption spending to spending on economic infrastructure that's going to give a return, and that has to be good for the country. But again, with all these projects, we need to make sure we are delivering them on budget, on time. We can't sit in 4 years' time and have some of these projects still languishing on the draft board. We need to have them up and running so we can show the people of South Africa this is what your government has delivered over the last 4 years.
Thank you so much. The DA, they're talking about the deliverables and the urgency needed to actually implement these programs. And I do believe that you've got the good party. I wonder what they have to say.
Do indeed. The Secretary General is Brett Heron. He's with us for his reaction. Brett will jump straight into it. The President making mention of the social relief of distress grant, committing to that, but stopping short of making any kind of announcement on a basic income grant, which of course a lot of people are looking out for.
Yes, we were really hoping to hear the words basic income grant, and when he started saying that the social relief of distress grant could be the foundation of something, and then I was expecting basic income grant. So it's disappointing that he didn't go there, although he did confirm that the social relief of distress grant has played a major role in poverty alleviation and will continue. But what he really needed to say was, after 20 years of studying basic income, our state is ready to implement a social safety net that includes comprehensive basic income.
Right. I mean, in many ways, I mean, there were terms that we've heard before: social compact, a developmental state, an ethical state, getting rid of corruption. The sentiment that's certainly come out so far is that it's all the right things, not enough of the detail, which again is not a new criticism. And I wonder if it's a criticism nonetheless you share.
I actually found this SONA to be maybe the most detailed. I mean, certainly in terms of unpacking how the economy will be turned around, what are the elements to do so, and what government is doing or planning to do to address the barriers to turning our economy around. So I left the speech feeling like it was probably the most comprehensive and certainly the most detailed in terms of how we turn the economy around. I think if there's a criticism around the economic growth vision, is that he is shooting for 3% economic growth, and most economists have been saying that we need at least 5% economic growth if we're going to meaningfully reduce unemployment. So the target is too low, but I thought there was a lot of detail in that economic growth plan.
Right, Brett Heron, thanks very much indeed. Brett is the spokesperson, the Secretary General, I beg your pardon, of the Good Party. Natasha, the reaction is flowing. Who do you have there?
Thank you so much. I'm now joined by Mr. Mulder of the FF+. Mr. Mulder, I just want to bring your attention to, at the beginning of the speech, President Cyril Ramaphosa had said that as South Africa, they will not be bullied. They'll stand together as one. And of course, I think you know what he's actually talking to this week. We saw that exchange between Elon Musk and US President Donald Trump about some misinformation around the Expropriation Act. What do you have to say as the FF+?
No, I don't think that there was an attempt to bully South Africa. We should understand how the real world works, and the President should also understand that. Tonight was a disappointing speech as far as I'm concerned. I think it was a very important opportunity for the President. It was the first opportunity to really reset the whole South Africa's process with regard to the Government of National Unity. I hope to hear a different message. Now, I said before the speech, are we going to get the President tonight as the leader of the Government of National Unity, or is this going to be the President of the ANC speaking? And I'm really disappointed, because what we heard is nothing new. It's all the same that we've had in the past, all the same recipe, more funds, more projects. But that's not what people are experiencing on the ground. They don't see a change in their lives on a daily basis. The data doesn't convince us that that's the case. And that's quite unfortunate. And then in the end, the President did refer to the Government of National Unity, but then he said it's very important that people get together around a common vision, and we're going to have a national dialogue. The fact that the national dialogue must still take place just emphasizes that we still don't have a common vision. And that's why at the Government of National Unity, it remains a problem.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mulder. Of course, Bulelani, I do understand that you're standing by there with the ATM leader, Mr. Vuyeleti Zungula.
Well, it would appear that the president is not going to get any brownie points from the Progressive Caucus. And now joining me is the leader of the African Transformation Movement, Vuyeleti Zungula, who now joins me to give his comment on the president's plan for the year.
Bulelani, SONA is about the people, not politicians, not the president, because SONA needs to talk to the lived realities of the people. Now, if you can go to any township, any village, the people are suffering. There are very, very high levels of poverty, to an extent whereby you've got people that have started something of taking their own lives because they cannot cope under this government. The unemployment rates are very high, the crime rates are high, even load shedding is back. So we as the ATM, we do not believe that it is correct for us to be overly excited by the speeches of the president, whereas he's been making speeches since 2018, but nothing is to show for it, because if he makes a promise in 2018, we should be asking ourselves that he made a promise last year. These are the results.
What would you have liked to see from him?
More accountability in terms of what he's delivered in the previous SONAs. Unlike a case whereby he is going to be in a situation whereby he's going to speak as if he's not spoken in the previous years.
All right, thank you so much, Vuyeleti Zungula, who is the president of the African Transformation Movement. We cross to you now, Ayanda.
Thank you very much indeed. Bulelani is standing now with the leader of the ACDP. He's been in Parliament for years, in fact, since the very first Parliament. And so I'm going to start there, Rev. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. You've watched the evolution of this institution, and it's sat through many State of the Nation addresses. I wonder in what way, if any, this one has stood out for you.
Well, this one tonight, I must say, it was a mixed bag. There are a number of positive things he said that we wanted to hear, that the nation is happy about. But there are two important things I want to raise that caused the House to be noisy. Okay? Pala pala, you hear the word pala pala when he touched corruption. It is important for the president to know that he cannot be favored by the police, by NPA, or by anybody else, because the president has failed to tell the nation how the $4 million came on his farm.
But he was cleared by the public protector.
No. How? The public protector did not tell us how that money came on the farm. Who is held accountable? The Reserve Bank was not informed about that money, okay? Even if the public protector cleared her, the fact is we are not convinced that the investigation was a proper one. He must answer the question. If people or members there knew that the investigation was correct, they would not have done what they did tonight. I wonder how he's going to sleep when he heard the word pala, 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 pala. He must come straight. He has a case to answer.
All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Very brief indeed. I know you had 2 points, but we'll have a moment to speak about those at another stage. Natasha, so many people to speak to, such little time.
Thank you so much, Bulelani. We're now joined by Action SA leader, Mr. Herman Mashaba. And of course, I just want to, engage him on an issue that's actually close to your heart, the issue of mining. We heard the president there, Cyril Ramaphosa, saying that government wants to breathe new life into mining. They're on track to implement mining rights, a mining rights system. They want to put in place a policy for critical minerals. And of course, this comes at the backdrop of, I think it was the 9th anniversary of the Lily mine tragedy.
Well, it's really very unfortunate. My own sense and reading of the lost opportunity that President actually really missed this evening after the ANC losing absolute power after the last year's election, forming what he calls a government of national unity, which is actually a grand coalition. He should have obviously addressed the issues directly. Coming back to your issue of mining, I don't know how he's going to address real mining that's going to benefit people of South Africa when they opened our borders, allowing international criminal syndicates going into our mines, and we get courts giving direction and directives that you must go and rescue people who go into mines voluntarily. And South African taxpayers and so forth are allowed to really happen. If you take the Lily Mine family, as you are aware, I was in Barberton yesterday, was the 9th anniversary of the collapse, tragic death of Priti Nkambule, Yvonne Mnisi and Solomon Nyerende. It's a matter that his own government completely does not even want to talk about it. They keep on coming out with one excuse after the other, working with the private sector. So if he's talking about mining, if he's not going to talk about mining at the same time protect the lives of ordinary law-abiding South Africans, this is just really a pipe dream.
Mr. Mashaba, thank you so much for your time. Let me just cross over to my colleague Bulelani, who is joined by Mr. Songezo Zibi.
Thank you so much. We are now going to be speaking to one of the partners in the government of national unity in the form of Rise Mzansi. Party leader Songezo Zibi now joins me for this conversation further. Mr. Zibi, thank you so much for making time. Firstly, as a partner in the GNU, a lot of these targets, plans, we've heard them before. Are you certain that there will be deliverables at the end of the day?
I think the first point of proof is going to be the budget, because anything that is not funded in any of the president's plans outlined in the State of the Nation address is not going to happen, because everything needs money. So this is part one of the plan. Part two of the plan is the budget in 2 weeks' time, and we need to see what that looks like. But for now, I think there's some critical differences with the State of the Nation address, because the president went into a little bit of detail, didn't just say infrastructure. He mentioned water, mentioned very specific projects. He mentioned the rail network, not just freight, but passenger rail, mentioned specific interventions such as the signaling equipment at Prasa, which are things that my committee has dealt with over the last couple of months as a way of unlocking some of the physical investment in infrastructure as well. What I was disappointed with is that the president did not specifically, I think, to the right level of detail, deal with the climate crisis, because it goes far bigger than just threatening livelihoods. It's destroying our infrastructure. As we build it, it gets destroyed, and it's costing the fiscals a lot more money, and also threatening food sources and security as well.
All right, thank you so much. Songezo Zibi, the leader of the Rise Mzansi Party. For more reaction, we cross back to you, Natasha.
Thank you so much. We continue to give you rolling coverage of the reactions coming out here. I'm now joined by the Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi. First and foremost, your reactions to this speech.
Well, I'm very happy, extremely happy. Firstly, the overall speech, its concentration on the issues of building the economy, to create jobs, because that's a problem for the country, and to end poverty. But on specifically on the department in which I'm deployed, health, the 3 announcements he made, we are very excited about them. That we are going ahead, forging ahead with the implementation of NHI, and something that we've been telling people, that improving the public health infrastructure and implementing NHI are not mutually exclusive. They don't have to follow one another. You can do them simultaneously. And that's what the president announced, because he has announced a massive hospital build, which we've been planning together with Treasury over many years. And lastly, about the last mile in our fight against HIV and AIDS, to put 1.1 million extra people on ARVs, so that by 2030 we can eliminate, not necessarily eradicate, but at least eliminate HIV/AIDS as a public health threat.
Dr. Motsoaledi, I know I quickly have to go to Bulelani. I just want to squeeze in this question. Has the GNU reached an agreement on the two aspects of the NHI? Briefly, please.
Just come again.
Has the NHI reached an agreement on the two aspects? Has the GNU, I beg your pardon, reached an agreement on the two aspects of the NHI? Do you know of this?
Which are what?
Remember,
which aspects are those?
There was the cabinet lekgotla that took place this past weekend, and of course there were those remarks by your minister in cabinet, Marupin Ramaphosa, who had said there was that agreement. Can you tell us if they were?
NHI is forging ahead. That's the most important to know. We are going to implement it. As to the nitty-gritties, we'll explain them as we move on. The thing you must just know is that the project we call NHI is on course, full stop.
Thank you so much. Bulelani, I do understand you have a guest.
All right, thank you so much again. Now joining me is Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshabeni, who's going to speak to us about, firstly, the President going straight for the commemoration or honoring the fallen soldiers in the DRC. Must have been something that has touched him, and I guess I see also in the pomp and ceremony the South African National Defence Force were also showing their honor to those fallen soldiers. Take us through the mind of the President.
So the parade is not a pomp ceremony. The parade is the salute to the commander of the armed forces. But when they do that, and the greatest honor you can offer a fallen hero is that parade, and that's why they were wearing, all of them, the black armbands to symbolize that we are in a period of mourning as a nation. The president has declared that from tomorrow the flag of the country flies in half-mast across all stations to signify that mourning. And I'm sure the South African Defence Force will announce the arrival of the remains, the mortal remains of our fallen heroes. And as we proceed to join the SADC East African Community Summit.
As a government spokesperson, cabinet spokesperson, just unscramble the minds of South Africans around the NHI. The minister was saying that they've reached an agreement that the medical aids will not be abolished once that comes into effect. And the health minister was talking a different tune. What's the status of that as a South African government?
The president has just articulated the position that we took at the Lekgotla in terms of the NHI is to develop an implementation plan for the NHI in the country, including the establishment of the Ministerial Advisory Committee or Council. I don't know what this is.
But what is the future of the private medical aid schemes?
Why don't we wait for the NHI for the implementation plan? The president indicated the need for the registration of all health service providers, the need for South Africans to have equal access to healthcare, making sure that we put basic infrastructure for health to be in place, the hospitals to be in place. We also need, after you put the infrastructure of the hospitals and the clinics that have facilities up top of the range facilities, you'll also need the medical staff to be there. So we need that whole capacity so that we can achieve universal healthcare. Remember, we can call it NHI, we can call it all sorts of names, but the bottom line is that all South Africans must have access to universal healthcare at the same quality.
All right, thank you so much. Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshabeni. For more reaction, I cross back to you, Ayanda.
Bulelani, thanks very much indeed. We'll jump straight into it. The Deputy Leader of the UDM is Ngabayo Nzimkwankwa, who's with us here. Thank you very much for making time, sir. Let me just begin by getting a sense of whether or not you reckon we have the money to pull off this plan, since you sit on the Oversight Committee looking over the budget. 900 billion rand for infrastructure. We're told we need thousands of transmission lines, more commitment to boost SOEs, including Eskom and Transnet, and the list goes on and on. Was this just a wish list or something realistically achievable?
Well, it was an ambitious wish list. Firstly, you are saying you want to have an infrastructure-led growth strategy, but you premise it on the very same SOEs that are failing. That's number one. That also are a drain on the fiscus. The second issue for us is that the president is downplaying, he seems to be downplaying the crisis in the DRC. The situation for our soldiers there is very dire. They even have to make do with 1 meal per day. There are many things which are happening. Some of the bodies are decomposing. Secondly, is the fact that the president spoke about one of the issues where they are going to open up new ports. I'm sure the intention is to try and stimulate trade, especially within the African continent, and to try and deal with port efficiency around the country in order for us to be able to stimulate growth. I do not see how, for example, we can be able to deal with the problems that America is throwing at our way if we do not look for alternatives insofar as that is concerned. I mean, more than half of the world's population is within the BRICS nations now. I'm sure if, for example, we are able to sit down and intelligently look at alternatives, we should be able to look for alternative sources of trade that can actually be able to replace whatever we do with America. They can take their AGOA and keep it where the sun doesn't shine.
Well, that's a bold statement. Very quickly, your leader is the Deputy Defense Minister. Let me just get a sense of how satisfied you are about the communication around what's taking place in the DRC, especially given what you've just said, that you feel like the president is downplaying the circumstances there.
No, of course, the president has to downplay it. It's very important for him because the situation, I would say, to a large extent, they are doing everything in their power to try and address it, following the diplomatic channels. But obviously, the soldiers need help, and they need help immediately, and we need to do something as a leadership and not go on or talks about talks without really addressing the underlying root causes. But I think behind the scenes there's a lot of work that has been happening or going on.
All right, Ngabayomzi Nkwankwa, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Ngabayomzi, of course, is the deputy leader of the UDM as the reaction continues to flow very quick and fast here. Natasha, it's over to you.
Thank you so much. We're now joined by COSATU President Zing Salosi. Thank you so much for your time. So you've heard what the president had to say. Does this message then, filter down to the workers? Do you think that the workers will actually resonate to the president's speech? A lot of talk about infrastructure, billions actually being pumped into infrastructure. One thing that also caught my eye is the SRD grant. The president had said that they'll use this as a basis for income support for unemployed people.
Thank you very much, Natasha. And indeed, we want to welcome the State of the Nation address by the President. We are happy because most of the things that we expected the President to touch on has been touched on by the President. The issue of the social relief distress grant and continuing with it to form the basis of the basic income grant. It has been a call that COSATU has been making for years now, and we're happy that the President is not talking about taking that away, but understanding that for people of South Africa, particularly the unemployed, we have to make sure that they are able to sustain themselves. But also I'm happy that he was able to link that with TVET colleges, because we have seen now that our kids have passed grade 12, most of them are devastated because they are unable to get to universities. But we're not talking about the artisans and skills that this economy is gonna need. Because if we're going to talk about the 943 billion on infrastructure, we are going to need the relevant skills. And we have always heard about South Africa not having the relevant skills that will be able to help us to build the infrastructure that we're talking about. So the emphasis of the president about the TVET colleges and also spending 943 billion that is allocated to infrastructure for us says that we are going on a right direction. But what then we must do that the construction mafias and all of them are not taking this away.
Thank you so much for those reactions. Let me hand over to my colleague Bulelani Phillips.
Well, now we're going to talk about the industrial policy that has been announced by the president that is expected to be finalized this year. Trade and Industry Portfolio Committee Chairperson Mzwandile Masina now joins me on this conversation. This industrial policy that the president talked about, what does it aim to do and how does it work towards this plan of growing the economy and creating jobs?
Thank you very much. I was quite excited that the President referred to the industrial policy for South Africa, which is something that we have been advocating for at various platforms in the party, but also in government, to ensure that there is one single industrial policy that is going to anchor reindustrialization of South Africa. As you know, that since the 80s and the 90s, there was a lot of massive deindustrialization that has occurred in South Africa. And coupled with that, and I was happy that the president is beginning to reflect on issues of the minerals and beneficiation, and which is a critical aspect which we must do here. We've seen over time a number of foundries closing down and so on, whereas we are the mineral deposit country. So I think that this will assist us to ensure that we can consolidate our strength in South Africa and ensure that we build an industrial policy that will support the development of the economy of South Africa. So it's quite a good news for South Africa.
On another subject, earlier in the week, you held a public hearings that called on all the major banks in terms of issues of competition. What was the resolution of that meeting? Particularly, what are the concerns of the committee?
Well, the meeting raised quite a number of concerns to the Reserve Bank, to the Prudential Authority, as well as the banks. 6 of the major banks, they had sent the high-powered delegation led by the CEOs, CFOs, and chairpersons of boards. One of the critical to this engagement is that we have now resolved that we must actually engage beyond just the banks, the financial sector in the main, because many of the banks are actually owned by insurance companies, as an example, and asset management firms. So we have now accepted that we must engage further, so that we can look at the various pieces of legislation that we must relook, so that we can ensure that there is transformation in South Africa.
All right, thank you so much. Mzwandile Masina, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry. For more reaction now, I believe Ayanda is standing by.
I am indeed, Bulelani, thanks very much indeed. Alex Mashilo, of course, is the SACP spokesperson. He joins us now for his reaction. Great to see you, sir. Was this the kind of SONA that battered for the working class?
Yes, what a good question. Look, South Africa is divided not only along the lines of race and gender, but also along the lines of class. So to answer the class question, you need to look at the political economy of the State of the Nation address. Which class does the president talk about when he talks about resolving the problems we face in electricity? He is referring to private enterprise. Investment by private enterprises is not investment for solutions or to meet the needs of society. These are investments for profit making. Private enterprises invest to accumulate wealth on a capitalist basis. You see the same thing in ports, you see the same thing talked about in rail, and then the same thing is talked about in water. The working class, for example, the over 12 million active and discouraged work seekers who are unemployed, do not have a cent to invest in electricity generation. The over 6 million workers who earn the national minimum wage do not have a cent. So in class terms, the political economy of the State of the Nation address we have had is the political economy of private wealth accumulation. So if you want to look at it differently, which class stands to benefit when the state pays or procures those services? Right. It is the capitalist class.
I hear you on that. I suppose then the next question is somewhat answered. Your level of confidence then as the Communist Party in this GNU-led government in 30 seconds.
Look, there are some positive elements and there are some negative elements. But from the political economy perspective, the class that stands to benefit in terms of ownership and control of the wealth to be produced is the capitalist class. So this is a message to the working class to stand up as a class in itself and a class for itself, because without that, the balance of forces are not going to shift.
All right, Alex Mashilo, thanks very much indeed. We really do appreciate it. Dr. Mashilo, of course, is the spokesperson of the South African Communist Party. Of course, there is so much more to be said. The president speaking for just over an hour and a long list of commitments being made. The obvious question, of course, is whether or not all of these will be seen through, given, of course, just how many people are hoping that this is a State of the Nation address that will make a difference. Of course, we'll continue with our reaction here for you, but for now, let's touch you back to our satellite studios. Bonge SK, we're still crunching through those words and those numbers.
evening indeed, and thank you so much to all of you. That's Natasha Piri, Bulelani Philip, Ayanda Nyati, bringing us the reaction from the ground. You've listened to a number of conversations that were taking place. Dr. Alex Mashilo, they're ending it off on a very interesting note, saying it's time for different classes to think about what the State of the Nation address means, particularly the working class. We are still here in studio with Sakina and Mzwai. You listen to Dr. Mashilo, you can tell, Sakina, for the SACP, that this is a deeper conversation than just about talking to the South Africans. It speaks to what he's calling the class notion, as he says that it's time now to look at the plans that have been proposed by the president and juxtapose them to who stands to benefit when those plans come into play. He says it's the capitalist class, and calling on the working class to now rise and take their position.
And he goes further to outline exactly what he means by that, talking about the lack of capacity on the part of the poor and working class to actually participate in this economy that is championing people buying and investing in some of the projects that are upcoming. And I think it is no secret that there is discomfort aplenty in the tripartite alliance at the moment, especially as it pertains to the SACP and the ANC as part of the GNU.
And I think it doesn't obviously surprise us that that unhappiness has led to the fact that the key ally, the SACP, has decided that, in the next elections next year, so they will go it alone, because some of the things they've been trying to impress upon their colleagues in the alliance so are not being followed through. So they feel they are not being taken seriously. So if your key ally is not being taken seriously in your view, so how do you then trust them to be able to do certain things that will be very important? The issue of the reconfiguration was very central. So that's why they are saying now, even if it goes on, the train has left the station. So clearly, the tripartite alliance, I think, is here to really monitor and check what exactly is being done here. But something which is actually not even lost to the GNU partners. I heard John Steenhuisen say, we don't have time, we only have 4 years.
And when you listen to John Steenhuisen, right, he speaks about how, there's been a lot of plans that have been put in place. Yes, implementation must come into play. But you listen to the UDM through Ngabayom's and Kwankwa. They are in the government of national unity as the UDM. He talks about a president who's downplaying the crisis in the DRC. You listen to the FF Plus. The FF Plus is saying that what a disappointing speech. So it does also further signal, Sakina, to a lot more tensions even beyond the tripartite alliance. And when you listen to different ministers, Kumbuzo Nchabeni, for example, saying these are teething problems, but certainly one just gets the fact that it's actually deeper than that.
It is much deeper. Already you've had 2 acts that have been promulgated, and we know how some of the partners within the GNU feel about those. There's threats of court action with regard to the Expropriation Act. Bella, I don't know, it seems to me, if you listen, at least the DA seems to be backtracking on that at the moment, and not just on the Bella Act. There seems to be, a bit of backsliding from the DA on quite a few issues that they were very gung-ho about previously. So that's an interesting development. But you also listen to the Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, about and if you listen to the president's speech, Dr. Motsoaledi is correct in that what the president outlined seems to be a precursor to the full-on rollout of NHI. And you heard the minister, he wasn't mincing his words. This is going to happen.
And I think this government, or rather the president, has decided that that which he has committed to, like signing those bills into acts, is because he's serious about it. When he started his speech, he made it clear, amid the threats that some funding will be cut, he said, we will not be bullied. So we will prioritize our national interests. So that tells you that as much as there may be some areas of disagreement within even the GNU partners themselves,
but there are certain decisions that can't be reversed that will be followed through. And I think the president just wanted to make that one clear from the get-go, to say it doesn't matter that the most powerful economy in the world has some reservations. So we will send our delegations to try and explain all of those. But right now, as we stand, as we sit here, we are steaming ahead with that which we have agreed upon.
Well, you know, as a parting shot, perhaps, I think the Freedom Front Plus were bold enough to say, we were not happy with this. I think if you listen to the president and if you look at the election manifestos as a point of direction for many of these parties, they couldn't have been too happy with a lot that was said here tonight. But of course, as John Steenhuisen said, they have to make this work. So they are perhaps in it for the long haul regardless, because Itala Bank, you know, we know the IFP was very strong on that in terms of what they wanted to hear in Itala perhaps becoming, you know, the prototype for a state bank. But none of that came out, and that's just one example. And I would imagine many of the other partners would be unhappy.
And especially when you think about ordinary South Africans who we've been speaking to throughout the course of the day, right? They're listening to the president talking about PRASA and the signaling problems that are going to be resolved and still to be resolved. I remember a few years ago I was at Denver. 2 trains collided. They were talking about signaling issues. Years later, now we're here again. It feels like more of the same. And that's why John Steenhuisen then says it's time to rush and implement. But that's how we wrap up.
I think that's why the next SONA next year will be quite key. Remember, this is effectively the first State of the Nation address under the GNU. The next one will be able to then look at all that he has said, whether they'll be able as the GNU to achieve. We will be judging them collectively.
Well, that's where we have to leave it. And of course, you will obviously have the opportunity to do exactly that. Go and take a look at last year, the year before, this year, and see how it goes. But as Zwai says, next year it will be the turn of the GNU to be assessed.
And that's how we wrap it. Thank you so much to you for watching as well and just helping us also make sense of the day's events. A lot of our reporters on the ground, we're still going to be looking at the speech, picking it apart. Let's leave you with the highlights as well, SK, from earlier on today, just to catch a glimpse of how the day went.
Indeed. And with that, thank you so much from us here at Parliament. It is goodbye from SONA 2025.